O Warner lança vídeo com 10 minutos de bastidores de Batman na Piada Mortal. Quer saber um pouquinho mais sobre isso? Depois da vinheta, assiste o vídeo até o final e já sabe, né? Se inscreve no nosso canal, cara. Futuramente tem prêmios para os nossos inscritos de novo. E aí, pessoas e não pessoas, coisas e não coisas, geeks e não geeks, nerds e não nerds, é fã do Homem-Morcego, do Batman? Então você deve saber que uma das HQs mais famosas do cara é a Piada Mortal. Isso não foi dito por mim, mas sim divulgado pela Warner, que agora lançou 10 minutos de bastidores da animação Batman, a Piada Mortal. E tem muita coisa, cara, tem várias referências que foram usadas, várias pessoas de peso falando sobre o projeto e ainda mais, algumas easter eggs que você pode encontrar no filme, que será lançado nos cinemas nos Estados Unidos apenas por uma noite, no dia 25 de julho. Depois vai chegar até as prateleiras em DVD e Blu-ray. Quer dizer, Blu-ray, né? Porque DVD eu acho que ninguém nem compra mais. Pois é, cara, isso aí está disponível, mas todo em inglês. Se você tem uma fluência boa nesta língua dos Estados Unidos da América, então faça bom proveito, já sabe. Link na descrição. Curte, compartilha e se inscreve. Até a próxima e tchau.
Something that guys wearing long johns should be doing. It was really shocking, and to this day it's still shocking. But the effect the comic had on the Joker as a character in mass media, it all kind of started with the Killing Joke.
Batman and Joker are these sort of fractured reflections of each other. They both were born from tragedy, and one went one way and one went the other way.
Obviously the Joker was the perfect guy to hold up that mirror to Batman. And this is a pretty sophisticated take on that.
All these years, and I don't know who he is any more than he knows who I am.
Are you sure of that?
What do you mean?
I mean, don't underestimate him.
Well, The Killing Joke is probably one of the most famous graphic novels from the 80s. And part of it, is the origin story of the Joker. I had read that Alan Moore had talked about this just being an Elseworld story, but because the story is so riveting and shocking, I think a lot of people took Joker's origins and sort of made it canon.
One of the main thrusts of The Killing Joke is a series of flashbacks that the Joker is remembering about how he actually became the Joker, his literal one bad day.
I find the past such a worrying, anxious place.
Well, I think, the concept of characters having a bad day, obviously Bruce Wayne had a bad day early on. And the Joker, he makes one bad decision in his life and it affects his entire future.
Memories can be vile, repulsive little brutes. Like children, no?
And I think Joker's point is, there's all these ideals that you uphold. There's all these things that you want. There's all these dreams that you imagine. But what happens when it doesn't work out for you? What happens if you have just one bad day?
Any person, any just regular Joe on the street, if they have one bad day, if it's bad enough, they can become as bad as the Joker. Visually, this movie was a real challenge. I mean, it's always a challenge when we're adapting something from a comic that's as famous as this one is.
It's so realistic that it would be a nightmare to animate.
There's some things that work in a comic that don't work as cinema, so you always have to kind of try to keep the truth of it or keep the spirit of the comic. For this particular comic, Brian Bolland's artwork is so gorgeous that when you're reading the comic, you can at least kind of go, well, at least I've got pretty pictures to look at while I'm reading this horrible story. It's so beautifully drawn. It's so his draftsmanship is just spectacular. But his art style is a real huge challenge for us.
And I think we kind of came up with a sort of a hybrid style. Because the Bolland style is so realistic and so detailed, we tried to look at maybe something else that sort of felt a little bit like his. So we looked at a period in Kevin Nolan's art style. We looked at because we kind of felt like it was a stripped down version enough, but it was animatable.
It's a good approximation of it. Every now and then I'll see a drawing and go, wow, that's a really good Joker drawing. That actually kind of reminds me of Brian Bolland, or that's a really good Batman drawing that looks like a Brian Bolland drawing. And so we kind of went from Bolland to Kevin Nolan to strip down even further to animation.
Barbara, take it easy. It's okay.
No, it's not okay.
So I think we kind of came up with a pretty good balance to try to get the Bolland style.
We thought, well, how can we make it a full-length feature? How can we expand the story without kind of just padding it? So the idea that we came up with was to create basically a prequel to the story.
It was smart to come up with the prologue idea, which I think it was really important to show Batgirl in action in this story, just to get a sense of who she was.
The audience gets to spend more time with Barbara Gordon as a person before the events of The Killing Joke. We get to like her more, we get to understand who she is as a character.
She wasn't just somebody's daughter. She was somebody who mattered to Gotham City, and Batman in particular.
Selfish, vile, piece of garbage!
The Killing Joke is definitely a much more of a pinpoint story between Batman and his most famous antagonist.
The Joker is trying to prove to Batman that there's really not that much that separates them.
I think everybody can relate to a tragedy that has happened in their life, or something in their life that happens that makes them go down a certain path. These are two characters that have gone down extreme paths. They were almost born in a similar way, yet they've chosen two very dark but